Rescue team saves bulls from bloodthirsty wolves in a breathtaking battle. The radio crackled with desperation at 3 in the morning. Mick Harrison bolted upright in bed, his heart already pounding before his mind fully registered the words screaming through the speaker. A cattle station owner in the remote Snowy Mountains region was reporting something that hadn't been heard in these parts for decades. A pack of wolves tearing through his prize-breeding bulls. The bloke's voice was raw with panic, nearly drowned out by the guttural snarls and terrified bellowing echoing in the background. Mick's hand trembled as he grabbed the radio, not from fear, but from the surge of adrenaline that came with 23 years of emergency rescue work. "Copy that, mate. We're mobilizing now," Mick responded, his voice steady despite the chaos he could hear through the transmission. "How many bulls? What's their condition?" "The 3 Brahman bulls, the white ones. They're cornered near the eastern creek bed. The wolves, Christ, there must be 15 of them. They're massive. My bulls are bleeding bad, real bad." Mick was already pulling on his thermal gear, the orange rescue uniform that had become like a second skin over the years. His mind raced through protocols, equipment lists, contingency plans. Wolves attacking livestock in New South Wales was virtually unheard of. Sure, there'd been rumours of wild dogs forming packs, but the station owner had been adamant. These were wolves, genuine bloody wolves, bigger than any dingo he'd ever seen. Within 12 minutes, Mick had roused his team. Danny Chen, the unit's wildlife specialist and veterinary liaison, arrived at the station within 8 minutes, his ute loaded with tranquilizer equipment and medical supplies. Bringing up the rear was old Frank Donnelly, a 62-year-old veteran who'd seen everything from bushfire evacuations to flood rescues, and young Sarah Mitchell, only 26, but already proving herself one of the sharpest tactical minds in the service. The drive through the darkness was tense. Frank gripped the wheel of the rescue vehicle, his weathered hands steady as they navigated the treacherous mountain roads. Sarah sat in the back, checking and rechecking their equipment, riot shields, extendable poles with capture loops, flares, air horns, and as a last resort, Frank's licensed rifle loaded with rubber bullets. "This is absolutely mental," Danny muttered, securing a case of veterinary supplies. "Wolves haven't been properly established in Australia since, well, never, really. What the hell are we dealing with?" "Don't care what they are, mate," Mick responded, his jaw set. 3 bulls are dying out there, and some mongrel predators think they've found easy prey. Not on our watch." The property stretched across 40,000 acres of rugged bushland. When they arrived, the station owner, a weathered man named Colin McBride, was waiting at the gate with a spotlight and a face drained of color. His hands shook as he pointed toward the eastern section of his property. "They're still there. I can hear them. The bulls tried to run, but they're boxed in by the creek. The wolves just keep circling, taking turns lunging in. It's like they're playing with them, wearing them down." The rescue team loaded into their utility vehicle, a specially modified Toyota with reinforced sides and a spotlight rig on top. Colin climbed into the passenger seat, his shotgun resting against his knee, more for his own comfort than any real tactical use. The vehicle bounced across the rough terrain, headlights cutting through the pre-dawn darkness, revealing glimpses of scattered cattle huddled in frightened groups. Then they heard it. A sound that made Sarah's blood run cold despite all her training. It wasn't the howling you'd hear in nature documentaries. This was deeper, more primal, laced with a hunger that seemed almost intelligent. The rescue team exchanged glances, and even Frank, who'd faced charging bulls and venomous snakes without flinching, tightened his grip on the steering wheel. The spotlight swept across the creek bed, and what they saw made even Mick, the unflappable veteran, suck in a sharp breath. 3 magnificent Brahman bulls, their white coats stark against the darkness, were pressed against a rocky outcrop. Blood matted their flanks, dark stains spreading across their pristine hides. Their eyes rolled white with terror, steam billowing from their flared nostrils in the cold mountain air. But it was the wolves that commanded attention, 15 of them, maybe more, their forms moving like liquid shadows in the spotlight's beam. They were enormous, easily twice the size of any dingo or wild dog. Their coats were mottled grey and black, and their eyes reflected the light with an eerie golden glow. They moved with coordinated precision, 3 holding position at the front, while others circled around the flanks, probing for weakness. "Bloody hell," Frank whispered. "Those aren't dogs. Those aren't even regular wolves. Look at the size of them." The lead wolf, a massive beast with a scarred muzzle and shoulders that seemed broader than a man's chest, turned its head toward the approaching vehicle. For a moment, it simply stared, assessing this new threat. Then it let out a low, rumbling growl that the rescue team could feel in their chests, even from 30 meters away. "Right then," Mick said, his voice cutting through the tension. "Sarah, Danny, grab the shields and poles. Frank, you're on the air horn and flares. Colin, mate, you stay in the vehicle unless I specifically call for you. We're going to form a barrier between those wolves and the bulls. Create enough noise and movement to drive the pack back. Once we've got some space, Danny, you assess the bulls' injuries. Everyone clear, nods all around?" All. They'd trained for dangerous animal rescues, but nothing quite like this. As they climbed out of the vehicle, the temperature seemed to drop another 10 degrees. The bulls' labored breathing created clouds of vapor that hung in the air. One of them, the largest, had a gaping wound on its shoulder where teeth had torn through hide and muscle. The moment their boots hit the ground, the wolves' attention shifted entirely to them. The lead wolf's lips curled back, revealing teeth that gleamed like ivory daggers in the spotlight. A ripple of movement went through the pack as they repositioned, some turning away from the bulls to face this new challenge. Sarah felt her mouth go dry. Every instinct screamed at her to get back in the vehicle, but her training held firm. She raised her riot shield, the transparent polycarbonate giving her a clear view of the threats ahead. "Air horn, Frank! Now!" Mick commanded. The blast shattered the tense silence. The sound was deafening, a prolonged screech that made even the rescue team wince despite their ear protection. Several wolves flinched, backing up a few steps, their ears flattening against their skulls. But the lead wolf barely reacted. It stood its ground, that unsettling intelligence flickering in its golden eyes. Frank triggered 3 flares in rapid succession. They arced through the air, fizzing and sparking, casting wild shadows across the creek bed. The magnesium-bright light revealed the full horror of the scene. The bulls were worse off than they'd initially thought. The smallest of the 3 had deep lacerations across both flanks, and blood dripped steadily onto the rocky ground. The wolves had been methodical, targeting the legs and underbelly, trying to bring the massive animals down. "Danny, we need to move now," Mick shouted over another air horn blast. "Sarah, with me." "We're pushing forward. Frank, keep those flares coming and stay ready with the rubber bullets if any of them charge." Mick and Sarah advanced in a disciplined formation, shields locked together, creating a mobile barrier. Their boots crunched on the gravel, each step measured and deliberate. The wolves watched, their bodies low, muscles coiled. 2 of them fainted forward, testing the humans. Resolve. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs, but she held position, trusting in the shield and her teammate beside her. "That's right, you mongrels." Mick bellowed, his voice carrying authority even in the face of primal predators. "Back off! Go on, get!" Danny moved behind them, his veterinary kit slung across his shoulder, his eyes constantly scanning the wolves and positions. He'd worked with dangerous animals before. Crocodiles in the Northern Territory, aggressive kangaroos, even a rogue camel once. But this was different. These wolves moved with pack coordination that suggested experience hunting large prey. They weren't just opportunistic scavengers, they were apex predators. The pack began to spread wider, trying to flank the rescue team. It was a tactic as old as pack hunting itself, and it was working. They couldn't cover all angles. "Frank," Mick called back, "we need more noise. Get the vehicle horn going, full blast." The utilities horn joined the cacophony, a continuous blare that echoed off the rocky hills. Colin, still in the passenger seat, leaned on it with all his weight, his face twisted with concentration and fear. The combined assault of sound and light finally began to have an effect. The younger wolves, perhaps less experienced, started to retreat, slinking backwards into the shadows beyond the spotlight's reach. But 6 wolves remained, including the scarred leader, and they weren't backing down. "Mick, we've got a problem." Sarah's voice was tight with controlled fear. 3 of them are moving to circle behind us." Mick's mind raced. They were exposed, vulnerable. If the wolves decided to attack simultaneously from multiple angles, the shields wouldn't be enough. He made a split-second decision. "Danny, forget the bulls for now. Grab the capture poles. Sarah, we're rotating 45 degrees. Frankie, if that big bastard up front makes a move, hit him with a rubber bullet. Aim for the hindquarters." They executed the maneuver with practiced efficiency, but the wolves adapted instantly. It was like watching a chess match played at breakneck speed, each side responding to the other's moves. The lead wolf let out a sharp bark, clearly a command, and the pack tightened their formation. Then everything happened at once. One of the younger wolves broke ranks, either through inexperience or opportunism, and rushed toward Sarah's flank. She barely had time to pivot, bringing her shield around. The impact was tremendous. 70 kilograms of muscle and fury slammed into the polycarbonate, and Sarah went down on one knee, her arms screaming in protest from the force. "Sarah!" Danny lunged forward with the capture pole, the loop swinging in a wide arc. He missed the wolf but managed to drive it back with the pole's reach. Frank's rifle cracked once, and a rubber bullet caught the retreating wolf in the hip. It yelped, a surprisingly canine sound, and limped away from the confrontation. Mick hauled Sarah back to her feet, checking her quickly for injuries. She was winded but intact, her shield showing deep scratch marks where claws had raked across it. I'm right, she gasped, shaking off the shock. "Let's keep moving." The lead wolf watched this exchange with what could only be described as calculation. It seemed to be weighing its options, measuring the humans' capabilities against the prize of the wounded bulls behind them. For a long, tense moment, the standoff held. The rescue team's heavy breathing mingled with the wolves, panting, and the bulls' distressed lowing. Then Danny noticed something that changed everything. "Mick, look at the big bull, the one on the left." Danny's voice carried a new urgency. "He's going into shock. We're running out of time. If we don't get to him in the next 5 minutes, he's not going to make it." The bull Danny indicated was swaying on its feet, its breathing shallow and rapid. The blood loss had been severe, and combined with the stress and cold, hypothermia was setting in. Its legs trembled, threatening to buckle. Mick made the hardest decision of his career. "Frank, full aggression protocol. Light up everything we've got. I want every flare, every noisemaker, everything. We're driving these bastards back right now, or we're going to lose that bull." Frank didn't hesitate. He grabbed the emergency flare kit, the one reserved for absolute worst-case scenarios. 6 high-intensity flares launched simultaneously, turning night into day. The air horn screamed continuously. The vehicle horn blared. Frank fired 3 rapid shots from the rifle, the rubber bullets cracking through the air. The noise was apocalyptic, and finally it was enough. The lead wolf took a step back, then another. Its pack followed suit, melting into the darkness beyond the light, but they didn't leave entirely. Through the harsh glare of the flares, the rescue team could see golden eyes gleaming from the shadows, watching, waiting. "Danny, go, now!" Mick commanded, maintaining his position with the shield. "Sarah, cover him. Frank, keep those flares burning and that rifle ready." Danny sprinted the remaining distance to the bulls, his medical kit bouncing against his hip. The animals were terrified, their eyes rolling, muscles quivering with the urge to bolt. But they were trapped between the rocky outcrop and the creek, with nowhere to run. Danny approached the largest bull slowly, speaking in low, soothing tones that seemed absurd given the chaos around them. "Easy there, mate. Easy. I'm here to help. Big fella, just stay calm for me." The bull's hide was slick with blood and sweat. Danny's hands worked quickly, assessing the wounds with practiced efficiency. The shoulder gash was deep, exposing muscle tissue, but it had narrowly missed the major blood vessels. The other wounds were superficial by comparison, painful and bleeding, but not immediately life-threatening. What worried Danny most was the bull's vital signs: elevated heart rate, rapid shallow breathing, trembling limbs, classic shock symptoms. "Mick, I need the thermal blankets from the ute, and the saline drips. This boy's core temperature is dropping fast." Sarah backed toward the vehicle, shield still raised, her eyes never leaving the shadows where the wolves waited. She could see them moving out there, restless shapes pacing back and forth. They hadn't given up. They were just waiting for an opening. A moment of weakness. She grabbed the emergency medical supplies and carried them back to Danny in 2 rapid trips, her heart pounding with every step across the exposed ground. Danny worked with incredible focus, wrapping the bull's massive body in reflective thermal blankets, the kind designed for human hypothermia victims but scaled up for large animals. He established an intravenous line, not an easy task with a terrified, injured bull, and began administering warm saline solution to combat the shock and blood loss. "Come on, mate, stay with me. That's it. That's a good boy," Danny murmured, his hands never stopping their work. Colin had climbed out of the vehicle now, unable to stay away any longer. His prize bulls, animals he'd raised from calves, were fighting for their lives. He approached slowly, and when he reached the injured bull, tears tracked down his weathered cheeks. He placed a hand on the animal's neck, feeling the rapid pulse beneath the hide. "Brutus," he whispered. "That's my Brutus. He's only 4 years old. Cost me 30 grand at auction, but that's not why." His voice broke. "He's a good bull, gentle. My grandkids feed him apples through the fence." The moment of humanity, of genuine connection between the farmer and his animal, seemed to create a bubble of calm amidst the chaos. Even Mick, hardened by years of emergency work, felt something shift in his chest. This wasn't just about rescuing livestock anymore. This was about preserving something precious, something irreplaceable. But the wolves hadn't forgotten them. A new sound emerged from the darkness, a long, haunting howl that raised the hair on every human neck. It was answered by others, creating a chorus that echoed across the valley. More wolves were coming. "Bloody hell," Frank muttered, loading fresh rubber bullets into his rifle. "That's calling reinforcements. We need to move these bulls now, or we're going to be properly outnumbered." "The other 2 bulls are stable enough to move," Danny reported, quickly examining them. "But Brutus, I don't know if we can transport him safely yet. Moving him could cause more damage, maybe trigger a heart attack. But staying here isn't an option either." Mick's jaw clenched. Impossible choices, split-second decisions. It's what they trained for, but training never fully prepared you for the weight of these moments. "Colin, can you get a cattle truck out here?" "Not through this terrain, mate. Creek's too wide, ground's too rough. Only way is on foot or maybe with a quad bike." Right then, Mick turned to his team. "We're making a stretcher. Danny, you keep working on Brutus. Sarah, Frank, help me fashion something we can drag him on. Colin, you're going to lead the other 2 bulls back to the homestead." "Can you do that?" Colin nodded, wiping his eyes. Yeah, I can do that. They'll follow me." Working with desperate speed, the team used the riot shields, some rope from the vehicle, and a heavy tarp to create a makeshift sled. It wasn't pretty, but it would distribute Brutus's weight and allow them to drag him across the ground. The bull weighed close to 1,000 kilograms. Moving him would require all of them working together. As they worked, the wolves crept closer. The flares were burning out, their bright light fading to a dull orange glow. The shadows lengthened, creeping back toward the rescue site. Frank fired warning shots, the rubber bullets cracking against rocks, keeping the pack at bay. But ammunition was finite, and the wolves seemed to understand that time was on their side. "How we doing, Danny?" Mick called out, securing the last knot on their improvised stretcher. "He's stabilizing. Temperatures coming up, heart rates decreasing, the salines helping, but we need to move in the next 10 minutes. Max, if we wait longer, he'll be too weak for transport." "Right." Mick stood, surveying the scene with a commander's eye. "Sarah, your point. Shield up. Head toward the vehicle. Frankie's your rear guard with the rifle. Danny, you maintain that IV line while we move. Colin, get those other bulls moving first. Create a path for us, and whatever happens, nobody stops. We move as one unit, nice and steady. These mongrels smell fear, so we give them confidence instead." Colin moved toward the two healthier bulls, making clicking sounds with his tongue. Despite their terror, despite the blood and chaos, they recognized their owner. Their ears swiveled toward him, and when he began walking, they followed, their hooves crunching on gravel. It was a testament to years of gentle handling, of trust built between man and animal. "Now," Mick commanded. 4 humans strained against the weight of a 1,000-kilogram bull on a makeshift sled. The tarp slid across the rocky ground with a sound like tearing fabric. Brutus groaned, a deep rumbling that spoke of pain and fear, but he didn't struggle. Perhaps he understood, on some level, that these humans were trying to save him. Danny moved alongside, keeping the IV line clear, monitoring the bull's breathing. The wolves followed. They materialized from the darkness like ghosts, pacing parallel to the rescue team's route. The lead wolf, the scarred one, stayed at the front of the pack, its golden eyes fixed on Mick with an intensity that felt personal, almost vindictive. This wasn't just about food anymore. It was about dominance, about territory, about the eternal struggle between civilization and the wild. Frank fired another shot, then another. His rubber bullet supply was running critically low. 3 shots left, he called out. "Make them count." The distance to the vehicle felt infinite. Every meter was a battle against gravity, against exhaustion, against the weight of an injured bull and the press of predators. Sarah's arms screamed in protest, her shield feeling heavier with each step. Sweat ran down Mick's face, despite the cold. Danny's breath came in ragged gasps as he struggled to maintain his medical grip on the bull while keeping pace. Then the wolves made their move, perhaps sensing the humans' exhaustion, perhaps emboldened by the fading light. 3 wolves broke from the pack and rushed forward in a coordinated attack. They came from different angles, a classic pincer movement that would have done any military tactician proud. Frank pivoted, dropped to one knee for stability, and fired. The first rubber bullet caught the nearest wolf square in the chest. It tumbled, yelping, but scrambled back to its feet and retreated. The second shot went wide, ricocheting off a boulder. The third wolf was already too close. Sarah spun, releasing her grip on the sled, and swung her shield like a battering ram. It connected with the wolf's shoulder, sending it sprawling sideways. But the impact threw Sarah off balance, and she went down hard, her shield clattering away across the rocks. "Sarah!" Mick couldn't leave the sled. If he released his grip, Brutus would slide back down the incline they'd fought so hard to climb. The wolf recovered with terrifying speed, turning on the fallen rescuer. Its lips peeled back, and for a heartbeat, Sarah saw her own death in those golden eyes. Then Danny was there, swinging his medical kit like a club. It wasn't much of a weapon, but the unexpected attack startled the wolf enough to make it hesitate. Frank's final rubber bullet hit home, striking the wolf's flank, and it retreated with a snarl of frustration. Danny hauled Sarah to her feet, both of them gasping. The IV line to Brutus had torn free in the chaos, precious fluids spilling onto the ground. But they were only 20 meters from the vehicle now. They could see Colin ahead, loading his two bulls into a stock trailer that he'd somehow managed to maneuver closer. "Last push!" Mick roared, finding reserves of strength he didn't know he had. "Everyone, pull! Now!" They strained together, and the sled lurched forward. 10 meters. The wolves circled, agitated, sensing their prey escaping. 5 meters. The lead wolf let out a frustrated howl, a sound filled with primal rage. 2 meters. Frank jumped into the utilities back tray, reaching down to help haul the sled up. Brutus was too heavy to lift properly, but with all 5 of them working together, even Colin abandoning his trailer to help, they managed to secure the bull in the reinforced stock area. Danny immediately re-established the IV line, his hands shaking with exhaustion and adrenaline, but still precise, still professional. Mick did a quick head count, everyone accounted for, everyone alive. He allowed himself one breath of relief before climbing into the driver's seat. "Everyone in! We're getting out of here!" The wolves rushed the vehicle as it started moving, a last desperate attempt to claim their prize. Claws scraped against metal, teeth gnashed at tires. But the utility had been built for tough conditions, and within seconds they were pulling away, leaving the frustrated pack behind in the dust. The drive back to the homestead was quiet, except for Brutus's labored breathing and the occasional murmured reassurance from Danny as he monitored the bull's condition. Sarah held an ice pack to her shoulder where she'd landed, but her eyes were bright with the satisfaction of a job completed. Frank methodically cleaned and stored his rifle, his hands steady despite what they'd just been through. Colin's homestead had a proper veterinary station, a necessity on a property this remote and this large. By the time the sun crested the horizon, painting the snowy mountains in shades of gold and pink, Danny had Brutus stabilized, properly sutured, and resting in a recovery stall packed with fresh hay. The other 2 bulls stood nearby, as if keeping vigil over their injured companion. A proper veterinarian arrived from the nearest town just after dawn, a woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, who examined Danny's fieldwork with approving nods. "You saved his life," she told Danny simply. "Another hour, and he would have been gone." The shock alone would have killed him. Danny just nodded, too exhausted for modesty or celebration. He sat on a hay bale, accepting a cup of tea from Colin's wife, his hands wrapped around the warm ceramic. Mick stood outside the barn, watching the sun climb higher. His body ached, his uniform was torn and bloody, and he'd probably pulled something in his back. But they'd done it. 3 bulls saved, 4 team members safe. He pulled out his mobile and called headquarters, filing a formal report about the wolf sightings. This would need to be investigated properly before other livestock, or worse, people, were attacked. Frank joined him, offering a cigarette which Mick declined. "Hell of a night, boss," Frank said, lighting up. 23 years I've been doing this, and I've never seen anything like it." "Yeah." Mick watched the smoke curl into the morning air. "Those weren't normal wolves, Frank. They were too big, too coordinated. Someone's going to need to track them down, figure out where they came from. Not our problem anymore, though. We did our bit." Mick smiled slightly. "Yeah, we did." Inside the barn, Colin sat beside Brutus's stall, his hand resting on the bull's massive head. The animal's breathing had steadied, his eyes were clearer. He would recover. The vet had been certain of that. It would take months of care, physical therapy, to regain full mobility in that injured shoulder, but he would live. Sarah came to stand beside the farmer, her own shoulder now properly bandaged. "He's going to be all right," she said softly. Colin nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. Finally, he managed, "You lot. You're bloody heroes, all of you. I don't know how to thank you. Just doing our job, mate," Sarah replied. but her voice carried the satisfaction of someone who knew they'd done something extraordinary. The rescue team stayed through the morning, helping secure the property, setting up additional lighting and fencing to deter the wolves if they returned. Local police arrived around 10, taking statements and photographs. Wildlife officers came next, examining tracks and collecting samples. The story would make headlines across the state. Mysterious wolfpack attacks prize bulls. Rescue team saves the day in dramatic nighttime battle. But for the 4 rescuers loading back into their vehicle that afternoon, it wasn't about headlines or recognition. It was about the moment when Sarah went down and Danny pulled her up. About Frank's steady aim in the darkness. About Mick's unwavering leadership when everything seemed impossible. About Colin's trust in strangers to save the animals he loved. As they drove away from the property, Mick glanced in the rearview mirror. Colin stood in his driveway, one hand raised in farewell, his 2 healthy bulls grazing peacefully in the near paddock. And in the veterinary barn, Brutus rested, already beginning the long journey of healing. "Reckon the news will get this one right?" Danny asked from the back seat, already half asleep. "Does it matter?" Mick replied, "We know what happened. That's enough." Sarah smiled, leaning her head against the window. The snowy mountains rolled past, beautiful and dangerous in equal measure. Somewhere out there, a pack of wolves was licking its wounds, perhaps planning its next hunt. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Today, they'd won. They'd faced down the bloodthirsty wolves in a breathtaking battle and emerged victorious. Not just the rescue team, but the bulls too, survivors of a night that would become legend in these remote valleys. 3 weeks later, Mick received a photograph in the mail. It showed Colin standing beside Brutus, both looking healthy and strong. The bull's shoulder wound had healed cleanly, leaving only a scar that would serve as a reminder of the night he'd been saved. On the back, Colin had written simply, "Thanks to your team, this big fella gets to see another season. Forever grateful." Mick pinned the photo to the bulletin board in the rescue station, where it joined dozens of others. People saved from floods, animals rescued from fires, lives changed by the dedication of emergency responders. Just another day's work, as far as the official records were concerned. But for everyone who'd been there that night, for everyone who'd faced down those wolves and refused to surrender, it was something more. It was proof that when courage meets compassion, even the most fearsome predators can be defeated. And sometimes, in the darkest hours before dawn, ordinary people accomplish extraordinary things.